Okay, we've got to make up for our heavy horses review.
Frondley. Remembers Frondley. That's what my notes say. Hello, and welcome to In the Court of the Wenton King. 221. Episode 221. Heavy horses. Heavy horses.
Again.
Horses. Do you like horses?
Oh, no. Well, they're all right.
Go on, do horse thing.
Horse
impression.
That's very difficult.
I can't do it.
I haven't done it for years.
Yeah, you go. I can't do it. I go. Apparently John Anderson has no interest in horses, but that's irrelevant because Ian Anderson has no interest in horses. An awful lot is said, basically from Ian Anderson. There's the dark albums and there's the light albums in the catalogue. The ones Anderson remembers fondly, and the ones he doesn't. And I think he kind of admits there's only a bit of crossover with the actual music. It's all about his own experience. But Songs from the Wood is definitely a light one, and this is definitely a dark one. But it is, people call it Songs from the Wood 2 and all that. It is the next one of that. So it directly follows that, and it follows a Return of Fortunes. I think only in the UK, but a Return of Fortunes. It's possible the single had a lot to do with that, actually. But and the opening track really exemplifies that perfectly. It's kind of heavy now. It's dense and intensely folky. It isn't folky at all. It's prog, but the sort of heavy acoustic thing, and that's really, really on that first track. It's definitely a progression, as well as being an accompaniment. It's not, although it was just more songs. They just wrote more songs, and those were the songs they'd written. It is a progression. It's still the folky Gentle Giant, but it's not, Little Jack's in the Green at the bottom of the garden. There's none of that. It's the earthy, dark countryside horror version of farming. It's definitely farming, and it's definitely countryside horror, which is a great combination. Yes, and this thing of the old horses no longer being of any use. It's quite profound. It maybe got a bit of an echo of Too Old to Rock and Roll. A bit more of it than that, though. Maybe this is a bit broader. And like I said, he doesn't even like horses. It's his wife who liked horses. And, okay. Yeah, and this ultimately leads to a denouement that surpasses the previous album pretty much for the rest of the catalogue. Yeah. It's good. It's good. Good album. More heavy horses.
Kev likes heavy horses.
Heavy horses.
Everyone likes heavy horses, don't they? It's sort of like, of this run, isn't this considered or widely considered as the best one?
Well, they all
supposedly
are. These three, they all are actually. So it's a bit difficult. I mean, when we originally did Tull, it was so hard to choose. And still, I don't know.
Yeah. Now I'm trying to remember our last review. I didn't have a lot to say about it, other than. And it came after Minstrel, didn't it? Which I really, really loved.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, unless this lives up to Minstrel. So I kind of expected to find this a bit better because, I've gone back and I've listened to more Jethro Tull, the albums we covered.
Yeah, and we've done songs in the wood, importantly.
Yeah, and I've enjoyed it. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna enjoy that this time. Yeah, still don't get it. It's so, I don't know what the things I love about Jethro Tull is there's a sort of vibrancy and brightness to the music, and it's hard to pinpoint where it comes from. Obviously his vocals are involved. There's a sort of gestury texture to his vocals, which isn't here. It's actually very monotonous, his vocals on this. It doesn't have that sort of verve that's on his other albums. That sort of, I don't know,
it did a
lightness. You know, I say lightness. I mean, the good stuff of Jethro is the flute and it's not country music, is it? What folk, yeah. So the folkiness with the heavy stuff, and that sort of dichotomy, that playing off it's quite exciting, and it gives it lightness, yet a sense of cool and performance. I just can't get on this. I've tried, Kev. I've really tried. I just don't get it.
It did. I was obviously comparing it to Songs from the Wood. I was trying to see, what's the difference? It's darker. Well, what does that mean?
Yeah, and I like dark stuff.
It's missing the whimsy.
Yeah, that's a good word. Whimsy and humour.
It's not there. It's the darkness. It is darker because it's kind of heavier.
I mean,
which is strange because normally you don't like the lightness. You like the heaviness. But interesting.
Maybe I've changed. Even the title track. It's the penultimate track on the record, and I find it so disappointing. Yeah. I think this should be the best track. And it's. I find it. I don't know. I just can't wait for it to end. The best bit on the whole album for me is the very first bit of track 1, and the Most Police Never Stops. The little guitar-y thing. I think this is okay. This is quite cool, proggy stuff. And then I don't know. I just don't get into it.
There's a little bit of a horse noise right at the very start, and I don't know if it's on that one or not. It's definitely on that one. Maybe it is on that one.
There is a noise at the start of the version. I couldn't identify it as a horse.
I assume it's the Stephen Wilson version you will be hearing on Spotify.
Is that 2003?
No, that's 2003.
Oh, is it? Maybe is it? No, it's this one I was listening to then.
Okay, so it is that. I've never noticed it before. It's like I've never noticed the cover.
It's very quiet. I don't know if it is a horse. Anyway, expectations are quite low from the beginning. It's got horses on the front. Okay, so this is a song about horses.
Do you like horses?
No. So maybe that's playing into it a little bit. I idealise the countryside living, but I have no experience of it. So maybe he's talking about stuff that I have no.
Well, whereas Songs from the Wood is a fantasy of the record player on the tree stump. This is actually really about farming. But it's like kind of dark and evil, dangerous.
How do you tell it? It's about the dangers of farming.
Yeah, it's like combine harvest.
Give that here.
Children of the Corn and all that stuff.
It's not about the dangers of the farming.
When the combine harvester comes along, it's just, oh man. Makes me think of Superman 1.
Yeah. No, Superman 3.
Is it 3?
Lana Lang, isn't it?
Of course it is, yeah, because he's in the countryside.
Smallville.
Yeah. Goodness me. I want to see Superman 3 again.
Buster, Richard Pryor. Cool.
There are good bits in Superman 3. But Richard Pryor is great in it.
Yeah.
Both keys at the same time.
We watched Stir Crazy the other night on such a good film. I was laughing. I could hardly remember it, but it's a really good film. Anyway, digress.
They did build a new studio as well. This is the other thing. Just like Pink Floyd, like about a year or two earlier.
It must seem like such a good idea to a band. We'll have our own studio. We can do what we want.
Yeah.
Spend as long as we like making records.
Yeah, and Pink Floyd, it was just terrible. Apparently, they had a speaker for each track. It was ridiculous. But problem was they had to rent it out to pay for it. But they had to rent it out all the good time when everyone wants to play. That's the time they had to rent it out to make the money back. So consequently, they had to go in at horrible times.
Weren't the acoustics really bad as well?
And the Pink Floyd.
In the Pink Floyd one,
yeah. It was built by someone who didn't know what a studio was. Basically, they just put some speakers in holes in the room. Stupid. Jethro Tull wouldn't have done that. Obviously, Ian Anderson's very sort of clued up and sensible, driven individual. He would have got the best people in. But it is interesting in one sense. Well, doesn't it sound the same? Acoustically, acoustically. doesn't it sound the same as Songs from the Wood? But maybe that's a thing.
This is the thing, Kel. I think because you're a guitarist and a musician, I think you tune into the instrumentation more than the vocals. And I tune into the vocals, and the primary thing I'm hearing is quite a suppressed, I would say. I wouldn't say monotone because that's a little bit insulting, but it's kind of suppressed. It's in a low register, and it's sort of it's not got the sort of, it's not got the expression that the other albums have got.
I mean, by now he you know, you have to remember he will say himself he's not a singer. He just became the singer when they were in the front room, and back in the early '60s or whatever it was. He was the one who was singing, so he ended up being the singer. And because he's the songwriter, well, it's a good idea to sing your own songs. You know where this goes. If you don't sing your own songs, you get someone else to do it. It goes bad, doesn't it? Is that the singer gets all the credit for your song, Bridge Over Troubled Water, who wrote that, etc. But he said himself that he never found it easy. He had to find a way to get around it. And his voice is kind of baritone, but he's up there. It's very, very stylized, isn't it? And you think about the very early sort of jazzy stuff, and over the 70s, obviously he's been doing excessive touring, so he is likely to sound different to he does on Aquador. You would, wouldn't you? Because he's got to find a way to do it where he can just continuously do it all the time. You don't get a chance to warm up or anything like that in those days. But at the same time, I don't hear it. I don't know. There is a suggestion that the band weren't getting on at this point, and that's the Darker album thing from Ian Anderson. He remembers it as being a bit more difficult. But in the book here, it does say, well, that's kind of exaggerated in that compared to some bands, it was
previously
fine.
Mentioned in this review.
Yes, it was fine. You think about the darkest music often comes from happy situations sometimes, or not bands trying to kill each other, and you think of all those West Coast bands in like the 60s, all the hippies, the Mamas and the Papas, they fucking hated each other. It was awful. Whereas, Led Zeppelin, when they were good anyway, we don't know later on, but they seem to have got on fine, playing music, and Black Sabbath, the very early stuff, there aren't. I've always said the string arrangements on the albums are always fantastic, and that's a big thing. This also has the violin guy from Curved Air on top of that, so that I think that really helps as well. Sadly, he didn't join the band, but then again, there would have been a 7-piece. The thing we haven't talked about is we've said, oh yeah, it's acoustic, and all Tull is acoustic, isn't it? But I think it's an Ian Anderson thing, like his voice as well. He started off as a guitarist. I'm sure if he could have afforded it, he would have had a Strat, in the very, very early days. And then a guitarist came in and he felt he couldn't compete and gave up with that and had to pick an instrument no one's playing. And then over the next 15 years, 20 years, he learned to play the flute. Started off by just going brrr into it, which was great. But he learned to play it. But when the original band split up, the first album, Mick Abrams left. They got Martin Beret, and it was a very different situation. So that's when he started playing acoustic to accompany the very, very noisy Martin Beret. I wonder if that happened with Tony Iommi, or it was after Tony Iommi or not. Jethro Tull fans don't really like talking about the fact that Tony Iommi was in the band. They want to turn their noses down at Black Sabbath. But it is difficult because he sounds exactly the same as the previous guy. You listen to the Mick Abrams album, and yeah, Tony Iommi had heard that album. It sounds a lot like Tony Iommi. He didn't have any fingers though, so yeah. So he went back to the guitar, having given up But then he was obviously influenced by the real folk people. So that folkiness is always there, and it's Ian Anderson doing, but not the rest of the band doing it. And that's what it is. No Lullaby was a lullaby for his son. You can imagine, where does it go? It goes down, 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 dun, 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 dun. Can you imagine bringing a martial amp into his son's bedroom? Time to go to bed. But you hear the extra song, you think, I can get that. I think I said this in the last review. Journeyman. That could be like, it's almost like Chili Peppers. That's a really interesting one. And that's an album track, isn't it? It's a forgotten one. In an ideal world, Moths would be the perfect single. It is a wonderfully constructed piece of music. It's perfectly accessible. It's your 3.5 minute, whatever, or however long it is. In a perfect world, it would have been a big hit, I think. Ring Out Solstice Bells is so great. But it is a Christmas song, whereas Moths isn't. Moths is just a fantastic piece of music. And it was released as a single, but I don't think it was a hit, sadly. So yeah, Heavy Horses.
We've done it again. Have we done it justice?
Heavy Horses, I think it's the same. Never mind.
It's amazing, after all this time. Look on the internet, people say, this is an amazing album. It's so fantastically brilliant. This is the best thing Tull have ever done. And I'm like, oh, God.
Yeah,
bit of pressure, and then I listen to it. I'm like, no, this is how I remember it.
Yeah. So what the question is? What is that? So is it that once your brain had picked it up the first time, is that still there?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Or there's just something in there you don't like?
I don't think it's a case of don't like. It's not like other listening experiences I've had with the usual suspects, Bowie and Yes. It's kind of, I don't find it offensive. I find it indifferent.
Right. So it's just like more songs.
It's more song. I'm not gonna, there was something in Aqualung and Thick as a Brick that made me want to go back to it. Yeah. I detect none of that in this.
But you did like Songs from the Wood.
I did like Songs from the Wood. Very strange. If you say they're saying the same, because they don't sound the same to me.
Yeah. So it has to be 6 eggs for me. It's a 6 egg album.
Oh, it's a 3 egg album for me, Kev.
3
eggs for Heavy Horses.
Heavy Horses. What's that song? Is it? Yeah. It's like the Osmonds or something, isn't it? So yeah, thank you and good night. Stormwatch next week.
Yay!
And it's good night for me.
It's good night from him.
Good night.